Welcome. Today, we're diving into a piece of human biology that's not just fascinating, it's a surprisingly powerful indicator of our overall health. We're going to break down the science of the erection. First, let's rewind the clock a bit, because for literally thousands of years, how an erection actually worked was a complete puzzle. And the theories, well, they were all over the map. I mean, some of the early theories were pretty wild. Around 300 BCE, you had the great philosopher Aristotle thinking it was all caused by an influx of air. It took until the Renaissance for Leonardo da Vinci, through his incredible anatomical studies, to correctly finger blood as the key ingredient. But the real secret, the tiny molecular switch that kicks the whole thing off, we didn't figure that out until the 1990s. Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of it, because when you really strip it all down, the penis is just an incredible, self-contained hydraulic system. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is like this. It's a structure designed to do one thing really well: fill with fluid, get rigid, and then empty out again. It's just a beautiful piece of biological engineering. So how does it pull this off? It's a surprisingly simple three-step process. First, the smooth muscles inside, which are normally tense, get a signal to relax. That's the green light. This lets the arteries open wide and just flood these spongy tissues with blood. Then, as those tissues swell up, they physically press down on the veins, trapping the blood inside. That's what creates rigidity. So just remember, relax, fill, trap. The whole thing really boils down to this simple contrast. You have the flaccid state, where the muscles are constricted and blood flow is low. Then you have the erect state, where the whole system flips. The muscles relax, the arteries become floodgates, and the exit veins get squeezed shut. It all hinges on whether those little smooth muscles are tense or relaxed. Okay, so we know what happens mechanically. The muscles relax, blood pours in. But the really interesting question is, how does the body actually flip that switch? How does it go from off to on? You know, the answer isn't a big muscle flexing or some brute force signal. It's actually a tiny, incredibly powerful molecule that acts as the master messenger for the whole operation. And here it is. Meet the star of our show, nitric oxide, or just NO for short. This simple little gas is the primary signal that gets released from nerve endings. It is the key that turns in the lock to start the entire chemical chain reaction. Now here's where it gets really cool. It's a cascade. See, nitric oxide doesn't do the final job itself. It triggers another molecule, a second messenger called cGMP. You can think of cGMP as the foreman on the job site. It's the one that goes and tells the smooth muscles, okay, time to relax, which lets all that blood flow in. And of course, if you have an on switch, you gotta have an off switch. That's where this enzyme PDE5 comes in. Its entire job is to be the cleanup crew. It swoops in, breaks down that cGMP signal, which tells the muscles to tense up again, the blood flows out, and things go back to the flaccid state. And by the way, this is the exact enzyme that modern ED medications are designed to block. So now that we've put together this really elegant model of how everything's supposed to work, from the brain to the molecules to the hydraulics, it becomes a lot easier to understand what's happening when the system breaks down. Here's the clinical definition. And it's so important to see this not as some kind of personal failure, but as what it is, a medical condition with real physical causes. It's basically a signal that something in that beautiful chain of events we just walked through isn't working right. And you can see here, while it can happen at any age, it definitely becomes more common as we get older. I mean, studies have shown this same trend for decades. There's a pretty big jump from your 40s to your 60s. For a lot of men, it's just a part of the aging process. So what can go wrong? Well, the problems trace right back to the system we just mapped out. It could be faulty wiring, an issue with nerve signals. It could be a hormonal imbalance. It can even be psychosocial, where stress and anxiety just override the whole process. But the most common biological cause is that last one. And that's clogged pipes, or arteriogenic dysfunction. This is when the blood vessels themselves are the problem. They're just not healthy enough to deliver the blood needed. And it's this specific cause that holds the most important clue about your health overall. So let's get to the final, and I think the most crucial point. Let's see how this all connects to something much, much bigger than just sexual function. Just let this number sink in for a second. 93%. In one major study for nearly all the men who were eventually diagnosed with heart disease, their own bodies gave them a warning sign. Erectile dysfunction showed up an average of 2 years before their heart condition was ever diagnosed. Why? Well, it's because, as we've seen, an erection isn't simple. It's a really complex event that demands perfect teamwork between your nerves and, most importantly, healthy, flexible, wide-open blood vessels. And here's the kicker. The arteries in the penis are way smaller than the coronary arteries that feed your heart. So when systemic issues start to creep in, things like plaque buildup that affect your whole body, where do you think the problems are going to show up first? That's right, in the smallest pipes. They are, quite literally, the canary in the coal mine for your vascular system. This completely changes how we should think about this topic. This isn't just about sex, it's about survival. Erectile function is a highly sensitive personal barometer for your cardiovascular health. It's an early warning system that's built right into your body. So the final question really isn't about performance, it's about perception. If we start to see erectile dysfunction not as something to be ashamed of, but as valuable feedback, as data from our own bodies, that shift in perspective can be life-changing, and maybe even life-saving. If your body's barometer is changing, it's telling you something. The only question left is, are you listening?